This has the potential to be one of the biggest stories within this constitutional crisis, judicial versus executive branch.
This is one of the
thing
moments
that's
where
happening.
it has the potential to like alter the course of this country forever.
But this is the court mandating that the Department of Justice do something and the executive branch do something. But what if the executive branch, Trump, DOJ, what if they say or just don't do it?
And
what if they just don't do it?
That's the constitutional crisis.
This is the judicial branch versus the executive branch.
Yeah. A little background on him.
For those of you that don't know.
Yeah, so he was a lawful permanent resident.
This is a gentleman in Maryland.
A gentleman in Maryland, a lawful permanent resident is one step below U.S. citizen, basically a green card holder.
Married to an American citizen with a child.
With a child, obviously an American citizen. Okay. And was deported.
Yes.
To which the Trump administration has already declared an administrative error.
Administrative error is the reason he was deported.
They
realize he shouldn't have been deported.
Pretty immediately after it happened and the news came out, the administration was like officially was like, yeah, we messed up.
Okay.
So they've already admitted that he should not have been deported.
Yes.
And there's some worries about El Salvadorian gangs have in the past tried to extort his family. So they kind of know who he is, maybe.
And he may not be safe in these prisons.
Yeah, particularly he could be unsafe there. And now the Trump administration is trying to conjure up the fact that he's a part of MS-13.
Oh, that's crazy.
Like they're just generating that out of thin air.
Okay.
Truly out of thin air, because there was, I forget who it was. There was some representative who was on the news like a week ago, and she was just saying things that no one in the administration had said before. I don't remember who it was. Oh. It wasn't Caroline Leavitt. It was somebody else.
Okay.
Because the administration had at this point admitted they messed up and it was administrative error. And there was now no talking points from the administration. So no one had made any claims about him being a gang member or anything. Mm-hmm. And she, on her own, said, the liberal media is lying. He's an evil murderer gang member, part of MS-13, and he's killed U.S. citizens and brought drugs in. She was like the first person to make those claims.
In an attempt to make him seem like a bad guy, we did the right thing.
To justify it. What they did by deporting him is absolutely illegal.
Absolutely illegal, which tees us up for, there's now a judge involved, a district court judge named Paula Zinnes. Mm-hmm. This has already gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in a 9-0 ruling in favor of the judiciary and the judge, that they now stand on that side. The Supreme Court, in the first ruling of a complete mandate, 9-0.
In this administration,
this is now truly the judicial branch. United judicial branch, including the Supreme Court, the executive branch and the DOJ. Mm-hmm. So here we are now, teed up for the first time, because there's been many judge versus Trump, judges versus administration. That's happened over and over and over again. There's already been 100 constitutional crises. However, this is the first constitutional crisis that we are facing where the Supreme Court is now on the judicial side.
And there's like an actual chance for a crisis to happen. And I would add this, we all knew a constitutional crisis was going to happen, but I think we all assumed that the Supreme Court would side with the executive branch. I don't think we expected them to oppose the executive branch. So I think that's more interesting in there's a crisis and they sided against Trump. Like,
it makes it more relevant now.
Yeah.
Because now that we have a judge, Paula Zinnes, district court judge, who is clearly not going to take any BS. She even wants daily updates.
Well,
talk us through what's going on here quickly.
So the hearing in Maryland, she's demanded daily updates.
Daily updates. Yep. This judge is demanding daily updates from the DOJ on the status of returning this gentleman from El Salvador.
Yeah, so her first question, why did the government not comply with my order and give me a declaration of someone with personal knowledge about Mr. Abrego Garcia's current location status? Ensign says, we've said what we can say. I do not have that info. So just deflecting.
Ensign is the attorney for the DOJ.
Yes. Judge Zenas says, so the government is going on record saying it has no information about Garcia's whereabouts. Ensign said, I'm saying I don't have that information as an officer of the court. My client has not provided that info to me as of today. His client being the DOJ.
Okay.
By extension, the federal government. Yep.
The executive branch.
The executive branch. Judge Zenas, it's quite basic information. I'm asking a simple question. Where is Mr. Garcia? The plaintiffs has said Garcia's was last known to be in El Salvador, and the government hasn't submitted evidence to contradict that. So he's like, y'all said he was in El Salvador, and we haven't said otherwise, so I don't know. That's what they're saying.
Wow.
Then, so she moves. What steps have the government taken thus far to facilitate return? Ensign said the government wasn't prepared to share that info, and that it is still evaluating what it can share with the court. So Judge Zenas then says, okay, so they've done nothing. This is a yes or no question. This is a direct question that is yes or no. I'm not asking what, just was there anything done to facilitate return? Ensign, I'm unable to answer, don't have knowledge of that. So which she takes that as a no. They've done nothing, is how she's taking that. She also kind of berated him for, if they don't communicate any evidence to you as their representative that they can relay to the court, then there's no evidence. An easy way to combat this is for your client to communicate what they've done. So like reprimanding him in the DOJ for like, you have to share. But you two aren't sharing if what you're saying is true.
And she said she's not asking for state secrets.
Nope. I'm asking, do you know where he's at? Yes or no? You don't have to tell me where it is.
And she can't even get a straight answer.
Can't even get a yes or no. Just, do you know where he is at all? And they're like, I don't know. I can't really tell you.
And this judge already mandated that they get this guy back by last week.
Yeah, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and they were like, yeah, you have to listen to her. And now it's back to her. So,
but the language the Supreme Court gave is that it's up to the executive branch and the DOJ to facilitate the return. The White House press secretary just yesterday said the Supreme Court said that we're only required to facilitate the return, not effectuate the return.
So here we go, right? Ensign, we're actively considering what could be done. This is a case that involves 3 cabinet departments, Judge Zenas. And while you do that, the irreparable harm continues. Is anyone moving with any speed on your end? SCOTUS has spoken quite clearly. Ensign, we disagree fundamentally on the status of the court's order. SCOTUS said the deadline is no longer effective. Judge Zenas, SCOTUS said that because the court's administrative stay stayed the order past the deadline. So she's like, the reason they said it doesn't count is because y'all waited too long. That's why the deadline that's technically in the past doesn't count, obviously.
Because they already violated the deadline.
I can't hold you to a deadline of April 2nd if it's April 12th.
Right.
So he's just being dense and obtuse for the sake of being obtuse. There's
already violated the deadline, so now there is no deadline.
And so he's like, oh, see, the deadline passed, so there's no deadline. That's his argument. Amended order, which makes clear you have to facilitate Garcia's return. Ensign, due regard for the executive means at a minimum you are required to hear from executive in a written brief before any order could become effective again. So basically she has to like hear from Trump before she's allowed to say anything. She goes, no, that's not what the court said. Quote, we're not going to slow walk this, the judge said. We are not relitigating what SCOTUS put to bed. So she is like, dumbass, you were getting him back. And he keeps like, whoa, no, I don't know.
So Judge Paula Zinnis, this district court judge with the Supreme Court ruling, 9-0 ruling with her backing, is very strongly saying, absolutely not. There is no argument. There is only one course of action, and that's to get this gentleman back in the United States. As per the previous court ruling from 2019, get him here. What are you waiting for?
Yeah. And the Garcia's representative basically was asked a question, and he was like, yeah, they're just playing around. The government intends to comply with SCOTUS's order, but that the court's deadlines are not practicable. Right, so meaning they can't pull it off.
Totally.
And then she replies, then you can tell the public that every day in status updates, which goes hard.
Yeah, that goes hard. Have we wrapped up the back and forth?
The daily
that's been going
updates
on?
Start Monday.
Oh, the daily updates are supposed to start this coming Monday.
Yep.
And
that's the wrap. So she's letting the weekend go.
Got it.
And the daily updates begin Monday. And the fact that this judge is like, you get to tell the public. why you're failing every single day.
Here's the greater issue I think that we're completely missing is we now have, for the first time, just like we said before, this is the judicial branch versus the executive branch. Here's my question. Here's my ultimate question. I'm going to leave it now out there. I'm not expecting an answer from you, by the way, but if you have an answer, great. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
So let's say that the DOJ and the executive branch slow walk this. They don't
drag their feet.
They drag their feet. They don't do what the judge is
try to do
requesting.
this legally. Well, technically speaking, you didn't say.
So if they're violating this judge's orders, with those orders being backed by the Supreme Court in a 9-0 decision already, will this judge start arresting people in the DOJ for not following her orders? What is the next step?
I believe typically she would have full authority to do so. Like a regular situation, and this technically counts, but I'm saying for ease for other people, if a judge orders you to do something and you go, no, you're in trouble.
You're contempt of court.
You're contempt of court, something. And then they'll start throwing the book at you. You cannot do that.
But this is the Department of Justice and the executive branch we're talking about.
And there is judicial independence.
Okay.
So there's like removal to some degree. That the courts get to make decisions, even if it's the Department of Justice.
But this is the court mandating that the Department of Justice do something and the executive branch do something. But what if the executive branch, Trump, DOJ, what if they say or just don't do it?
And
what if they just don't do it?
That's the constitutional crisis.
So what's going to happen? Is the judge going to order some sort of judiciary-appointed law enforcement officer, U.S. Marshals, whatever it is? I don't even know what it is. Is that judge going to order somebody to go in and start arresting people within the Department of Justice? This is the first true judicial versus executive constitutional crisis moment,
particularly probably
we're 90 days
in living memory of most Americans, that's this extreme where it's like
I don't think it's happened since the 60s.
We have separation of power, right? Obviously, and this is probably one of the boldest attempts at unilaterally defying the court and therefore defying the separation of powers as well.
Yes.
And so the judge is within her full legal right to arrest those defying court orders, because that's contempt of court. So she's like legally allowed to do that. However, who's to say Trump doesn't instantly pardon them, or Trump demands you work for me in the executive, you have to ignore them.
That's the question.
I'll fire you and let you get arrested if you don't listen to me. Or I'll have whoever at the DOJ have you fired and you will be arrested and I won't pardon you. If you listen to me, I'll protect you.
But the part that makes this interesting is that the Supreme Court is on the judiciary side.
So the Supreme Court has ruled unilaterally with the judiciary in keeping the separation of powers.
And getting this gentleman back.
So then it will continue to escalate. Does Trump start packing the court? Does he start just flatly ignoring the Supreme Court and saying, what are you going to do about it? And this judge, by the looks of it, is happy to arrest somebody for defying her court orders.
Yeah, this judge is tough judge. She's tough.
With an iron will. She is not bending.
Love it.
Not bending.
Love it. And this is beyond, by the way, politics of left, right, Trump,
this is simple
versus
court orders versus not court orders.
This is constitutionality.
Yeah.
This is
the foundation of our country.
Separation of powers.
Yes.
This is that sacred document that we all hold dear.
Yeah.
So it's truly put to the test now for the first time. So this is a news story.
And it's been tested before, but the judges have folded.
The judges have folded v. Trump or just historically?
V. Trump, this first time. The second term. They've made him look bad, but they've not to run into this case of a constitutional crisis.
But what makes this unique is that the Supreme Court
is with her and she's not bending. This could have happened 89 days ago.
It could have happened with any number of other cases.
It could have happened on the 21st, honestly, probably.
Yes.
But the judges have repeatedly folded in a way that hurts Trump, but folded as to not make this scenario happen.
Yeah.
But now the judiciary is flatly, no, Trump, you are wrong. So now we're going to see what happens.
This has the potential to be one of the biggest stories within this constitutional crisis, judicial versus executive branch
This is one of the
thing
moments
that's
where
happening.
it has the potential to like alter the course of this country forever. This is one of those like history defining moments where does the US president, a country famous for the separation of powers, I mean, everybody does, but like we pride ourselves on it.
Yep.
Do they just flatly defy their judicial branch? Or
And then what happens?
And then
what's the judiciary do?
this could become a moment where 100 years from now, or probably less than that, but 100 years from now, kids are reading the time when Donald Trump defied the judicial branch
And the Supreme Court.
and the Supreme Court, and then there was a constitutional crisis and whatever the hell ensues from that.
Pay attention.
The reason I'm not giving a real firm answer on being vague is there isn't one. That's why it's a constitutional crisis. Nobody has any idea what happens if the DOJ says fuck you to the court. No one knows what's going to happen next because she's allowed to arrest people.
Yeah, she is.
Contempt of court.
Yep.
So then what happens if she does?
We don't know.
So that's the vaguity. It's why I'm speaking vague.
Pay attention to what's happening with this story.
Yeah.
Because this is a big one.
Yeah.
Who's right? You tell us. You tell us.
Yeah.
Who's right? Trump or the Supreme Court?
I will add, if Trump defies the Supreme Court, then I would say he's already acting like a dictator. But I think that would be a moment when you start ignoring the courts.
Ignoring the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Not just the courts.
And then
'cause
by
Trump's
definition,
been ignoring the courts.
But now he's ignored every single level of court.
All the way up to the highest level of the judiciary, which is the key.
That, I think, very simply and cleanly lumps you in the definitional category of people like Stalin and Mussolini and the guy from Germany. I think YouTube might get mad if I say it. I don't know.
We won't say it.
But it lumps you in with the level of dictatorship
Yes.
of all the people that we hate in
Yes.
this country. He would be doing the exact same thing
Yes.
that all the people that we've condemned are doing.
It's the biggest story with the smallest attention to it at this point. Pay attention, folks, because it's coming.
It'll blow up.
It's going to blow up.
Yeah, so is Trump right or the court's right?